Coming up on Tower Talks, what UT students are saying in response to the University of Missouri president resigning and the Starbucks Christmas Cup controversy. All this and more coming up on Tower Talks.
Good evening and welcome to Tower Talks. I'm your host, Cassie Pollock, and thank you for joining us on this Veterans Day. Today in studio, we are joined by Madison Yandell with College Republicans and Joseph Trahan with University Democrats. Welcome to the show, both of you.
It's good to be here.
Glad to be here.
Well, last night, the top GOP candidates faced off in the fourth debate so far this election cycle. Co-hosted by Fox Business Network and the Wall Street Journal, it was a debate mainly focused on economic and foreign policy. The undercard debate happened beforehand. Governor Chris Christie, Governor Bobby Jindal, former Senators Rick Santorum, and former Governor Mike Huckabee talked policy for an hour. In the primetime debate, Senator Ted Cruz walked away with the most speaking time during the 2-hour discussion, and other candidates at the forefront of conversation were Senator Marco Rubio, Senator Rand Paul, and former businesswoman Carly Fiorina. So I want both of y'all's thoughts on last night's debate. Pundits are saying that Governor Chris Christie won the undercard debate. Agree, disagree?
Yeah, I think that's understandable considering he just stepped down from the top into the undercard debates.
Okay, and also pundits are saying that Rubio and Cruz kind of went back and forth between who won. It seems to be a kind of an even divide. Agree, disagree?
Yeah, I don't think it's shocking. I mean, they both performed really well in the first 3 debates.
So who do you think did best overall? And granted, we had some outsiders with regards to policy in general, Trump and Carson, but what did you see do well, and what did you see kind of maybe not do so well?
Yeah, well, I think Cruz obviously had a great debate. That's his strong point, is debating and talking policy in that setting. But I think Rubio and Kasich and Fiorina all had really strong performances as well. Trump and Carson definitely did not see the success that they'd seen in the previous debates, since this was a really heavily policy-focused debate.
I'd have to agree with respect to it being a policy-driven debate. It was more on specifics and ideas, which, Carson and Trump, they're not experienced politically, so it makes sense that they would take a backseat to this.
Okay, and moving on, in other 2016 campaign news, Senator Ted Cruz won 49% of a straw poll taken after the Texas Federation of Republican Women's conference on Sunday. Out of 408 votes, Cruz took home 203 of those. And the next day, Jeb Bush released a list of over 150 prominent Texas donors and supporters. On the list were Texas House Speaker Joe Straus, U.S. Representative from Texas Pete Sessions, and Texas Land Commissioner, as well as Jeb's son, George P. Bush. So I have a couple different questions. So, Cruz wins this straw poll. Granted, it's a small number. It's with a really, specific group of people. But he walked away with nearly 50% of the vote. So does that tell you about anything regarding how Texas voters how they're going to be casting their votes, if Ted Cruz is in the running when the time comes?
Right. I mean, I don't think it's necessarily a wide, example of where Texas voters are going. But, we've seen time and again that Ted Cruz is able to turn out grassroots support. That's how he won his Senate campaign.
So the very next day, Jeb Bush and his campaign, they come out and they're like, hey, look, we have these 150 people in Texas who are supporting us, who are our donors. So obviously Texas is in the spotlight. It's not a surprise to anyone that Texas is in the spotlight this coming election. What else do you think we're going to see happen and kind of get garnered in Texas that's going to be affecting what goes on going forward in the campaign?
Right. Texas is definitely a really important state for the primary candidates. It's a strong Republican state, but it's also, there's a lot of different views within the Republican Party just within here in Texas.
Joseph, do you think that regardless of who the Republican nominee is, that Texas is going to go to that GOP candidate and not Hillary or Bernie?
Considering our large rural population, yes.
All right. And on to our last bit of presidential campaign news. On Friday, Politico released an article initially reporting Ben Carson admitted to fabricating the story that he received a full scholarship to West Point Academy. After the story was published, Carson's camp was quick to react on all platforms, correcting what they believed to be inaccuracies in the article. Politico has since changed the lead in their article to state Carson conceded that he never applied nor was granted admission to West Point. So the topic at hand here seems to be something that happened 45, 50 years ago. Do you guys think that the same scrutiny is being applied across the board to other candidates? And when I say other candidates, yeah, sure, GOP candidates, but specifically Hillary Clinton and her Benghazi emails, that's happened in the past 5-10 years. Do you think that we're giving everybody kind of like a fair look at what's happening on the 2016 stage?
Right. I mean, I think this is kind of just an example of the media kind of just trying to find something to sensationalize. Carson really kind of, defended himself. Obviously, I was concerned when hearing this story, but like I said, I think it's just a matter of being sensationalized. When the media picks up on a story like that or the Benghazi scandal, they love to run with that.
I'd agree, but I would also like to point out that critics of the article and critics overall of people looking into Ben Carson's biography seem to be missing the forest for the trees, in the sense that unlike most other individuals who are running for president, he has no real experience. He has never served in an elected position. Therefore, there are no votes for us to trace back. There are no policy implementations for us to look into. So basically, he's running on two things: one, his biography, and two, his past career as a neurosurgeon. And so that gives the media and the American public at large no choice but to start looking into his biography to try and see how legitimate are these claims. Because Politico had actually created another article after the one that you just referenced, and it talked about how Westmoreland, the Army, the high-ranking Army official, he said that he had met on Memorial Day in 1969. According to their records, he wasn't even in Detroit at that time, and so there's still a lot more, I think, on this story and other stories in terms of validity and consistency with the truth.
So the Politico piece, it comes out, and the lead is it's saying, hey, look, he admits to fabricating this, and later, edits were made and whatnot. But do you think that it was fair of Politico to be coming out with such a strong claim to begin with? I mean, do they have rationale behind that? Is there logic behind that?
There is a rationale behind it. In fact, as I was alluding to earlier, since there's nothing we can really go off of, in terms of his political experience, we have to dove deep into his biography because he uses that as a major platform, being an individual who came from, less than modest means, and who overcame a lot, and making a number of claims ranging from having a temper to attacking his mother, trying to stab a friend, to meeting a high-ranking Army official and having a meeting with him, and claims like that. There are so many claims being made. It's important to see, is this far-fetched or is this really truthful?
Okay, all good conversation. Stay tuned. Still to come, a U.S. Circuit Court strikes down President Obama's immigration plan and how the Obama administration is reacting. Keep it right here on Tower Talks. On Monday night, the 5th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals ruled against the Obama administration's immigration plan, one that, upon its announcement, has been controversial. Obama announced last November deferred action for parents of Americans and lawful permanent residents, a plan that would allow 4 million plus undocumented immigrants to apply for a 3-year renewable work permit here in America, basically an expansion of DACA. Texas Governor Abbott was quick to file a lawsuit challenging the measure, and 25 states joined in on the fight last year. On Monday, the court ruled 2-1, the second time they've ruled against Obama's immigration plan. Joe Joseph, the court centered in New Orleans rules against this late Monday, and on Tuesday, Obama administration is quick to say, okay, well, we're going to repeal it to the Supreme Court. Speaker Paul Ryan has made it super clear that he's not going to be willing to work with Obama and his administration on this. So what do you think is going to happen if the Supreme Court ends up taking this case? Do you think they're even going to take up this case?
If time permits, it depends what their workload is like in terms of the other cases that people were trying to appeal or bring before the Supreme Court. Personally, I don't see what the big deal is about what President Obama is trying to do. In essence, it's trying to prevent, at least 4 million immigrants who are here undocumented from being separated from their families who are either natural-born citizens or they have permanent residency and they're just here with family. I mean, if they are permitted to have, like a 3-year work visa, temporary, they're contributing to society, and also to prevent them from being deported. I don't see why it's so controversial, and I think it's more of a political partisan move than it is really being, compassionate to people who aren't harming us in any way.
Right. Well, I think, I mean, the controversy of the issue centers on the fact that the Obama administration has continuously been overreaching on their executive powers, going again with unconstitutional means of trying to enact these plans. And so I think, this case is a perfect example of that, which those who are against it, like Speaker Ryan, have said time and time and again. And while there's definitely immigration reform necessary, this is not the way to go about doing that.
And if I may add, historically, President Obama has not issued executive orders on the scale that most of his other predecessors have. Specifically, Ronald Reagan, the Republican darling, he issued more executive orders within his tenure as president than Barack Obama has. I think Barack Obama's presidency is almost over. So it's important to recognize that though he does use executive action, it's not like he's using it to be tyrannical like a number of Ted Cruz Republicans would like you to believe.
So the whole opposition that Speaker Paul Ryan is having, he's saying, oh, I'm not going to work with the Obama administration. I'm not going to work with Democrats on this. What do you think he's going to be doing here? I mean, what kind of a role do you think he's going to have in the immigration conversation? Do you think that he's going to really try and stop this from getting to the Supreme Court, or what are you expecting to come from that?
Right. Well, I don't think Republicans really have any motive to stop this from getting to the Supreme Court at this point, because I don't think the ruling would be, or I think the ruling that the lower courts have made would be upheld once it got to SCOTUS. However, I think Republicans are really wanting to make sure that they have more of a say, I guess, or have more of a hand in immigration reform, at least comprehensive immigration reform, meaningful immigration reform, as we come into these next few years.
Okay. Now when we come back, we are going to be discussing what's happening at the University of Missouri. Stay tuned. What started as a complaint to the president from a student about racial threats on campus at the University of Missouri ended in protests, hunger strikes, and the resignation of the university president. Students expressed serious frustration that not enough was done to handle the threats posed to black students on campus. One student began a hunger strike and was supported by the student population and over 30 Mizzou football players, saying that they would not play until the president, Tim Wolf, resigned. Wolf and Chancellor Bowen Lofton have indeed stepped down since, and protests are continuing in Columbia as black students and other supporters demand changes in the diversity of their campus. We talked to UC students to see what they thought. Take a look.
I think that he definitely should have stepped down, but he should have addressed the issue in the first place. So I think that he did the right thing after he did the wrong thing.
It was appropriate for him to step down because I think that he waited too long to take action. I think if he could have if he would have taken some corrective actions early on and at least shown that he was making an effort.
We're in 2015, but we're still living as if we're in 1960.
Okay, so all this stuff's happening at Mizzou. What do you guys think about it? Do you think that the students that are protesting that obviously First Amendment, yes, but what's your take on it?
I believe that it shows that millennials do have a lot of power if we try to use it. I think that it's a great example of what students can do to impact change within their college campus and eventually maybe even their surrounding community.
Right. I think it, like Joseph said, it does show that millennials do care about things. We aren't just a stagnant generation. I do think it was really quick for people to call for President Wolf's resignation before really seeing what was happening. This all happened in a matter of a few days. But I do think it was a powerful movement, and it showed that this was something the students cared about.
So something that I kind of found interesting about the thing in its entirety is Mizzou is really well known for its journalism school, and the people who are protesting are saying that there's no media allowed. They don't want media covering it. They don't want pictures being taken. I've seen a couple YouTube videos floating around Twitter and whatnot of them saying, hey, we're not going to let you take our picture, no. So, but isn't that an infringement on a public campus of the First Amendment?
I do believe that it's important for the media to be involved in order to inform others about what is going on in the world around them. I think that what those students who are in opposition of media attention are trying to do is make the point that it's not just about getting fame or getting notoriety, it's about making change, substantive change on their campus when it comes to racism.
Okay.
Right. I do think, one thing to point out on that, though, is that kind of can almost hurt any cause that you have if you're, shunning the media. You see that in any situation where if you don't get the media on your side, well, then they're immediately against you.
All very interesting. And well, we're not done just yet. Keep it right here for our reporter Mackenzie Palmer talking to us about our social media sign out and Starbucks coffee cups.
Welcome back to Tower Talks. I'm Mackenzie Palmer. A single cup has been declared the leader in what is being called the war on Christmas. Starbucks, as part of its annual holiday-themed cup, released their design for the 2015 year. Instead of Christmas trees, snowflakes, and sleds like previous years, Starbucks went with a simple red cup approach. An uproar began after Joshua Feuerstein, a former pastor, posted a video on Facebook criticizing Starbucks for trying to remove Christ from Christmas. Starbucks responded Sunday, stating that they try to create a culture of belonging and inclusion. Many Christians took to Facebook themselves, backing Starbucks, saying snowflakes and sleds are not the true meaning of Christmas, starting the hashtag It's Just a Cup. I spoke to the Starbucks here on UT campus, and they stated how there hasn't been any backlash or protesting. Some students leaving the business with the red cup in hand said they do not care and cannot believe how blown up it has gotten. Back to you, Cassie.
Thank you so much, Mackenzie. Okay, so what are y'all's thoughts? Do you think Starbucks is out to kill Christmas?
I think it's just a cup.
I agree. There's radicals, and I can admit, in both parties, in the Democratic and the Republican Party, and I think with a lot of the radical Republican Christians, I think took this a little bit overboard.
It's just a cup. That's what these people are saying. For political updates throughout the week, follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook, and email your comments to towertalksut@gmail.com. Thank you once again to our guests, Madison and Joseph, for joining us in studio tonight. Additionally, thank you to our troops. Happy Veterans Day, everyone. I'm Cassie Pollock, your host, wishing you all a great rest of your evening.